Hello, friends. Welcome back to Trending. Today's Thursday, January 30th. It's about 10 as we're recording. Had some technical difficulties this morning, but here we are. We made it.
We made it.
Good morning, Joe.
How's it going?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Almost the end of January already,
Yes.
dude.
Yeah, it's flown by.
Yeah, just tear off that calendar paper. Boom.
Yes.
Be Groundhog Day before you know it.
Yes, it will. Literally.
Yeah, man.
Oh, man. So we took a quick break last week. Maybe we could just talk about this briefly. Last week, we were about to record, and all the trending topics, 1 through 30, were all political stuff that was
Very
happening.
spicy. It was very spicy. Yeah.
It felt like you and I couldn't really contribute something without getting in trouble or making somebody mad. It's just it's a lose-lose. You can't. There's not much to add with what we're trying to do, and those kinds of things are all the people are talking about. So
Yeah.
if we go dark on a random Thursday when there's a lot of political news happening, that's probably why.
That's your first assumption.
Yes.
And everything will be okay.
Yes. We do our best we want to be helpful and provide some helpful commentary, but I think there's some days where it's maybe not even helpful.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
if we skip a week, that's probably why.
Yeah.
We're back this week.
We are.
So,
Okay.
Joe, this is a hard day, man. Like a lot of people watching or listening, I got home from church last night. My phone was blowing up with all the notifications of
Yeah.
all the terrible crash in DC last night, and obviously it was the crash was from Wichita, so immediately Tilly and I were like, man, is there any chance we know anybody? And we've got local news up, and it's one of the most heartbreaking things to me is there's the number at the bottom.
Yeah.
If you think your family was on this flight, call this number, and your heart just sinks, man. Like, how awful, just a random Wednesday to know that potentially someone you love was just on a flight just like any other day, and they're just not there anymore. Like, it's heartbreaking. I think it hits extra close to home when it's literally from our home.
Yes.
And I don't think they've released the names of all the people yet, but I mean, there's a decent chance, at least the Kevin Bacon 3 Degrees, we probably know someone who knows someone who was on that plane, right?
Yeah.
So there's obviously a lot news breaking as we're continuing to record right now. They've pretty much said there's no longer a rescue initiative. They're just trying to recover at this point. 20 some bodies, I think. So Joe, this is heartbreaking, man. Like, I think it's the deadliest crash like this since 2001.
Wow.
I think. So we can kind of go a lot of different ways, but as news was spreading, and maybe even this morning, what's kind of top of mind for you today?
Maybe the easiest thing to get out of the way first is I just noticed that people were jumping to blame, shifting and pointing the fingers, and it's on the extremes of both sides. And that's just an unfortunate thing.
Yeah.
I think there's the only pure thing about that is this didn't have to happen, but it did.
Yeah.
It happened because maybe somebody made a mistake. And so I think the justice part of who we are, individually and collectively, looks for a way for this to be somehow close up. There's like some sort of a closure. Someone, take the blame for it so that we can, feel like justice is served and moved on. Yeah. But I think people jump to extremes, and that's just sad because the immediate thing like this is grief. Was there probably a series of unfortunate events? Absolutely. It could have been avoided maybe with, a couple things going in a different direction. But we should avoid like the, definitive finger pointing because it takes a while to get to the bottom of something. An investigation has to happen. So it's best for us to grieve with those who grieve at this point and wait for that stuff to materialize later. But I was just kind of struck by it didn't take long for people to get outraged by something when really there should just be a pause, fewer words in grief, and just holding loved ones close to you, right? So I think that's the easiest thing about this thing. But yeah, you're right. Like, isn't it weird whenever our city is a big city, but it's not well known.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever we travel for travel hockey and we're at an arena where our name could be put on a scoreboard, it's always misspelled.
There's always a T in there, right?
Wichita. And this past weekend we went to Davenport, Iowa. It was a WH. Wichita. Right. And I was like, man, they never get it. So when you're from a place like, where we're from, we think that we're flyover country. People don't care. Yeah. And so when our name is in a major headline, doesn't it give you pause like, wow, we are not just flyover country, but something as shocking and devastating like a plane crash can affect people very near to us. Yeah. It kind of invades maybe some naive sense of safety that we have in a place like this, right? And so I think that might be something to take on is, should we ever in our human experience assume that we're not going to have tragedy near us?
Yeah.
And then how does our faith inform how we can be more prepared when a tragedy does strike near us? Because inevitably it will. It will arrive on our doorstep at some point, at some measure.
Yeah.
So I think that could be something we could talk about for sure. So
that's one thing that we chatted briefly beforehand. Like, I think, unfortunately, when there's the fires in California, there's the flooding on the East Coast, unfortunately, there's school shootings more and more. I remember before yesterday, I remember feeling like, man, it's probably just a matter of time until something like this happens here. Like, there's just so many big, horrible things. Mathematically, it just kind of feels like, okay, when's it going to be our turn, you know? And so as horrible of a thought as that is, I think it's a realistic thought. And so I think maybe for people who are kind of struggling with, man, like, this did hit kind of close to home. And maybe we didn't know anybody personally, but yeah, even just seeing Wichita and national news, international news, having, the president and people talk about us as a town is maybe kind of weirdly frightening for people. So if that's kind of striking them as odd this morning, would you have any advice or counsel for them?
Yeah, I think we have to avoid the extremes on pretty much everything, including this. Like, we should not say we're invincible. It didn't happen to me, so I'm going to keep on this posture of I'm going to be able to skip through life without this thing. Nor should we be like overly panicked that tomorrow the sky could fall.
Yeah.
But I think that we should have some sort of a modest posture. And I think this is where some of the habits of our faith come in. Regular reflection, gratitude for things we have, acknowledging things that we've missed, keeping short accounts relationally when we've been hurt or hurt others. I think that it helps us because whenever a tragedy does come, an element of it is, I wish I would have had more time before this happened because I would have done X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Well, how do you make the most of a day or of a season of life is you're reflective and you do examine and you do remove things that get in your way and you add things so that you don't miss out on the good stuff. And so, a lot of times people talk about holding their children close on a after school shooting because children have been harmed. What's stopping us from doing that today? What's stopping us before we go to bed, instead of saying, okay, the kids, they're crazy right now, they just need to go to bed. What's stopping us from that extra long hug of whispering something very meaningful to them today, because something unknown could happen soon from now, right? And so I just think that prayer, solitude, reflection is something that we should add into our lives if we haven't by now, so that we can make the most of ordinary days, because inevitably every ordinary day can be hijacked by something that can be devastating.
Yeah. So, and it's kind of a shame that it takes something close to home to kind of wake us up a little bit. And just if people are wondering if anybody that we know has been affected so far. Again, we don't know of any specifics, but I saw a couple people that our friends may know. So Lyndon Vicks flies to DC regularly, and he said he often takes that flight. And so he posted last night, thankfully, I guess people are checking on him. He's fine. Marlene Wall, friend of Trending, is in DC right now, and she's close, and she's able to watch the Potomac River from her hotel room.
View out her window, right?
Yeah, so she's there. And then Jana said that our friend Sammy, who drums for us in the contemporary services, he had just flown back from DC, I think earlier that day or earlier this week. Man. So I think it just feels extra real when I just saw that person and they were just there. It kind of stirs and awakens in us a little bit that we don't. So I think you're right that maybe it is a time for us to reflect a little bit more. I guess anything else you want to add on that? Yeah, no,
I think that regret is such a heavy human experience. We can't live life without regret, because we can't plan for everything, and we do miss opportunities. But why not focus on the base note stuff now, the stuff that really matters, not just. We've talked about a lot, like the resume and obituary, documents that are being written in our life. And why not work on the obituary stuff now? Why not try to major on that alongside the other stuff that we kind of work on throughout life, so that fewer missed opportunities, more meaningful moments with people around us, because we just never know when a life can be taken from us. So.
there's part of me that hates to go here, but maybe I could bring it up just because it might be a good conversation to talk about.
Yeah.
Again, the last couple of weeks have been divisive. Some people watching are probably very excited about some of the things that are happening in Washington. Some people watching are probably very hurt by things that are happening, and everywhere in between, right? And unfortunately, tragedies sometimes can bring people together a little bit. And I kind of am doubtful that that'll happen on a national level. Yeah. But maybe at least because Wichita is our home, maybe at least locally, we can at least get away from some of the heated stuff and, hug our neighbors a little bit more this week. Yeah. I don't know. Again, I hate to kind of go there because I'm not making light of a tragedy, but it kind of feels like we're tiptoeing towards that, which I don't want to do. But what about that? I think it's true that sometimes these things kind of can bring people together. Yeah. Anything on that?
And the way that we bring are brought together is important too. Like how we grieve well is important. One of the things it taught us in seminary is the ministry of presence. So as church workers, we're kind of expected to have an answer to questions or a message for something, or I don't know, like we're always called on to have like something to say. And so one of the critical things they try to teach us in training for church work is there's going to be a lot of moments in your career where the best thing is not to say anything, because you're going to say something maybe that you think is meaningful, but it's clumsy, or maybe it's misguided, or maybe it's not the right thing to say, because nothing is the right thing to say at that moment. And so what can you do? Because like those are pretty, flashbulb memory moments in people's lives. So how can you do that well for them? How can you be the best pastor, church worker in their life? And so I do think that when we come together, we should be prepared for these moments. And a lot of times that preparation is being willing to be patient, being willing to wash some dishes if they're unwashed in a dish pan, if you're like with a group of people grieving in somebody's home. It's probably just to sit there very quietly, keep the phone away so that people don't get annoyed that you're there, but you're not really there. Something that Simon Sinek, who is I always feel like he has a great word for about every human experience. I caught a short clip by him recently where he was challenging those who say to somebody who's grieving, "I'm sorry for your loss." To be honest, that's a pretty good thing to say. It's not, "Hey, they're in a better place." "Hey, God's got a plan," or "Everything happens for a reason." Like all the stuff that's very empty. It can be kind of offensive to hear in a moment of deep grief. He says, instead of "I'm sorry for your loss," you can say something like this: "Hey, I plan on calling you at 9:45 every morning for the next several mornings. You can count on that call, and we can talk if you'd like. You can ignore my phone call, and I'm not going to be disappointed. I'm not going to be angry that you've ignored my call. Just so you know, I am going to be here, and I'm not just saying that, and I'm going to keep showing up." He's like, imagine how powerful that would be. In that moment, and how loving that would be to hear to someone that you're trying to walk alongside in grief. And this is something that is ancient as time. I mean, this is one of the things I admire about the ancient Jews and modern Jews is they have an official curriculum for walking with somebody in grief. It's like for the first week, we may have addressed this before, but for the first week, people are surrounded all the time. They cover their mirrors. Because they don't want people to look upon how hideous they might look in the midst of their grief and sleeplessness. And then there's a season where they're always alone because they need to process their feelings and thoughts. So when I first heard this, I was in my doctorate of ministry program. I almost did my doctoral work on a better way to grieve in modern American churches because I don't think we do it well. I think we're lost when we know how to walk with people in grief. And so I guess I would say, be prepared for tragedy to come to our doorstep because it's going to happen. And when we do gather together and have a moment where we can have some solidarity, how can we do that in a way that Jesus would do it? How can we do it in a loving way? Because love never fails. So what would love look like grieving together? And I think hopefully we would have some good practical steps because of that.
Yeah. That's good, man. I like it. Maybe your next doctorate could be on grief. I'd love to hear your thoughts and research on grief.
The next one, well, you need to start, convincing Ginger Skill to let me go to school again because she is not convinced. She has not heard that word from God.
Maybe you can write it without getting credit for it. Just write it because I want to hear your
thoughts.
Ghostwriter. Yes.
Yeah, man.
All right, man. Well, I'm sure as the day goes on, the week goes on, we'll continue to hear more, learn more about it, and my heart's still kind of heavy about it. I know probably most of our community is. So. I guess maybe a closing thought like you started with, instead of being tempted to go directly towards blame, go towards love and kindness, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's what, maybe some good can come out of it if we respond well. So
it would
my
be
hope.
kind of the minority opinion and result the leverage move, and I think it'd be filled with loving kindness if we did that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, well, we'll wrap it there. I would love to have you join us on Sunday, as always. And pending any crazy political news, we'll be back here next Thursday.
That's about
All
right.
things are on the table right now. So, all right, well, have a great day. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.